Welcome to the Nobody Guide to Life, where we provide tips and tools for personal growth, personal development, and your spiritual journey that you can use right now in your everyday life. I'm J.A. Plosker. Thank you for joining us. You can find out more at thenobodyguidetolife.com, or you can check us out at Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View. You can also join the Simple Spirituality group on Facebook. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please consider a subscription or a review. We'd really appreciate it. So if you have a child or have ever been around a child, you know they have a mind and a world all their own. So whether it's a newborn, toddler, a teen, children go through stages as they grow. And if you're lucky, you realize that it's not a child's job to conform to our expectations, but that's our job as parents, caregivers, or loved ones to try our best to see the world through the child's eyes and to understand their language and what they're trying to communicate to us. In other words, it's not for us to withdraw from our children in difficult times, but to try to draw them closer. So this applies even more strongly when helping children deal with, well, their monsters. So like so many other kids at bedtime, I remember checking under my bed in the closet for monsters. I even do this as an adult sometimes. So of course, all I find in there is dust and clothes, but still, for millions of kids, the fears are real. And nowadays, monsters aren't just under beds. They're in the environment in the form of food sensitivities, or they're in the mind, such as a lack of self-esteem or anxieties. So how do we help children defeat those monsters? My guest today believes that these monsters, and many more like them, that get in the way of a child's successful navigation through life can be tamed by creating a whole and grounded child in mind, body, and spirit, and that creating connection is the key. Lisa M. Smith is an educator and author, and she's certified as a neurodevelopmentalist and in parent effectiveness training. And she designed a program that led to the remediation of her son's autism. Her holistic approach focuses on a child's mind, body, and spirit. She's published 9 books and facilitates parent coaching and workshops that focus on the importance of recognizing that all behavior is a language. And her objective? To teach parents how to interpret that language to parent on purpose and in peace. She's on the panel of experts on the Child Safety Network and works with families to create parenting models and effective parenting strategies. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be with you.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Just reading your bio, I can just feel the passion for families and children. Why so passionate? Where does that come from?
Well, to be honest, I think I was born with it. I remember being 12 years old and going into my church, and my mom would say that I was like the Pied Piper. The children would just gravitate towards me. So I think it's what I came here to do. I've always been able to see and feel what a child is experiencing, and I also can help connect them to their true nature because I see that. I see their little lights, even if it's shrouded in some of those behaviors that we're not quite very fond of as parents. So, and then I have children. I have 2 stepchildren that came into my life, and then my own children. And I really think this fire that was already burning came to a full roar when my son was diagnosed with autism. And I just knew that I needed all the tools, all of the education, everything that I came here with, in addition to things I didn't even know existed, to help pull him out of that.
Your background is so extensive. Did you go back to school for this training? Were you already trained and just pushed it even further when your son received his diagnosis? How did that work?
So I did go back for training. I decided that I needed to, after we went through the autism, I really wanted to work with families. So I worked as a neurodevelopmentalist, and I decided I wanted to further my education to understand from mind, body, and spirit how to help children. And I realized it wasn't just going to be working with their brain. It wasn't going to be working with just some of the sensory issues or neurodevelopmental issues. I also realized children come in, as we all do, with an innate spiritual plan. And I wanted to be able to help parents realize that children do come through us, not to us. And part of our job is to guide them along this path. And by looking at the mind, the body, and the spirit, we can help our children excavate their highest and best selves as well.
That's interesting. So, you say children have an innate spiritual plan. How did that come to you? Where was that realization? What was that moment where you felt that really strongly?
I think that probably it came when I recognized my own abilities that came innately. It wasn't anything at 12. I hadn't studied children. How did I know this? Where did this
Right.
come from? It
Right.
was just there. And then observing my own children, my son and his kindness, even as an infant, in the throes of autism, he couldn't speak, but I could feel his compassion as a little
Right.
child. I'm like, there's something in this little being that is here to help heal the world. How do I help him do that?
Right. And I love something you said before, that you said you could see and feel what a child is experiencing. Can you
Mm.
describe that a little more? I've heard other people describe that to me when it comes to children, that they have a very strong connection with children, more so than adults, and they're more empathic with children. What does that feel like inside of you?
You know, it feels like a little secret club when the children walk into my office or I see them. It's like we have this little unspoken agreement that we know what's happening. The adults and the rest of the adults in the room have no idea. And it's so sweet because they immediately will tell me things. They'll immediately open up. They will share because I think it's because I see them. I really see them. And to be fully seen, heard, and validated in this world is what we all crave. It's what
Right.
we want so much. So when somebody sees you, maybe for the first time, for children, what's so magical is when you reflect that back to them, they see themselves as well. And they don't have the filters we have as adults. So they believe it. They
Right.
believe what you show them. And it's so magical. And I just love that experience when that happens.
Do you find that that transfers to the adults in your life? Do you find that the things do you think that that gift makes you a little more sensitive to the adults that you know in your life?
It does. And because all adults have little children inside of them, we all
Right.
carry around inside of us the unhealed, the ungrieved parts of ourselves. So when an adult will come to me for counseling, they're like, well, do you work with adults? I said, yes, but I think your little child wants to play. And they just laugh and they just say, okay. And sure enough, as we heal that little child inside, the adults gets to learn how to do that themselves. And then they get to play with their child and heal that child, giving that child what that child didn't get. And of course, that's what creates monsters in all of our lives, are the beliefs and the thoughts that we got as children that we are continuing to this day.
If we have things that we experienced as children that do continue with us as adults, what is this idea then of monsters, these things that stay with us that start as children? Can you go a little more in depth into what that means?
I call them the adult-sized monsters, but I tell adults, go look under your bed. Your monsters are not real, just like your child's
Oh, yeah.
monsters aren't real. Yeah, just think so. So a monster thought, I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I can't do this.
Right.
Those monsters started to form because once upon a time, as a child, you formed a belief that you didn't matter. You had a specific need, and the people you looked to meet that need were, for whatever reason, incapable of meeting that need. That need was not met, so you hid that need under the bed, and that unmet need is your monster.
Hmm.
But the truth is, it's not really a monster if you coax it out from under your bed and you learn how to meet that need. You will find the healing that you've been looking for. So to grow spiritually, we have to look under our bed and say, why am I doing what I'm doing? Where did that come from? Is that mine? Do I really believe this? Is this belief helpful or hurtful? And just like children, we can look at our behavior. If you're not getting what you want, or if you're getting things and you're trying and you're doing all of these things and nothing is happening, you can look at, what's that belief? What is that monster that I created that I'm continually perpetuating? And how do I heal that?
That's interesting, because it's that idea of reflecting and healing, this process over and over, this cyclical thing that we do. And it's got to be hard for children who may not have a support system in place to be able to reflect and heal. And so can you tell us, if you're working with a child, or someone out there listening is struggling with a child who they think might benefit from this kind of pathway, how does that look in the healing process for you? How would that look in your office? How would that look with a client you're working with?
So typically what I do is I will have an intake form, and that what we're exploring, I look at the mind, the body, and the spirit. Mostly, what are the behaviors? What are the things that are happening that are keeping your child from being successful? And after we look at that, I look at the underlying causes. So, for example, a child that can't sit still at school, wiggly, 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 moving all the time, there's something called your vestibular system. It's the way you feel yourself in this world. If it is underdeveloped or overactive, it will cause imbalances such as wiggly, 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 wiggly kids. So this is a kid that's historically been labeled as bad, hyper. Right. Medicate this child. But if we look at that underlying cause and we go, oh, he's not bad. And by the way, I don't believe anyone's inherently bad. We're all good. We have behaviors that are acceptable and unacceptable, but no child is inherently bad.
Right. And so how do you heal that then? If a child comes to you, so you have an intake form and we have behaviors that you'll identify as the therapist, but how does that healing process then look?
So part of what I design is a program depending on what's happening with the child that the parent can do at home. But I also provide the parents with different tools. I say we kind of do a little corrective lenses. Let's take off those glasses that you have formerly seen your child with and let's put on some new ones. So my very big tenets are my child is not their behavior. I'm like, repeat after me. My child is not their behavior.
Right.
Behavior is a language. And if my child is misbehaving, it's because something is missing.
Yeah.
And the last tenet that I have is my child is doing the best that they can, but with my love and understanding and support, they can do better. So what I ask parents to look at is, what is my child communicating with their behavior? So you can look at what your child is doing, and then I have a few little tools. One I call a speed bump, and it's an acronym for basic needs. Is my child's basic needs, are they being met? Yeah. So for example, if you take a child out who's 2 years old at 8 o'clock at night to a crowded noisy restaurant, you're probably going to see some behaviors. That child's basic need of winding down and going to sleep is not being met. The U in our acronym here is understand. Do I really understand what is happening? Is this sensory? Is this a learned behavior? Is this a coping strategy? What's actually happening, and do I really understand it? The M is, will this matter? I call it the 5-5-5 rule. Will what's happening matter in 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years? But some things will matter, and that's a good rule to say, will this matter? And then the P is problem. Who owns the problem? You know, a kindergartner forgetting their lunch, mama's got to own that problem, or daddy's got to own that problem.
Right.
Teenager forgetting their lunch, let's let that teen own that problem. Let them figure out how they're going to be an adult. Because remember, they're on that bridge moving towards adulthood. Right. And a lot of times what we do as parents, we either under support or over support. And I see a lot of kids today with what is called learned helplessness. They actually don't know how to meet their own needs or take care of themselves. And so that in and of itself becomes a monster as they move through this world because they don't know how to navigate it.
What I like about this is it sounds like a team effort, and it puts a lot back on the parent. And it's like we talked about in the intro, this idea of sometimes as the parent, we need to step forward and be part of the child's world and see it from their perspective instead of expecting them to come into our adult world and manage the problems themselves. And I like that there is a lot of responsibility on the parent to do some examination, to really dig and to really see where they can put in the work. It sounds a lot like the personal and spiritual journeys of an adult.
Totally. You know what's so fascinating? I learned this. One of the ways that I learned to heal my son was to join him in his world. He was not in my world, and I couldn't. He would sit for hours and he'd line up his little cars and he'd just hum and he'd move those cars. And I would just sit, how do I become part of his world? So I would take his car and I'd run it over my nose. I'd put my face in his face with the car. And little by little, I joined him in his world. And by doing that, I was able to pull him into my world or our world so that he could navigate that as well. And I think that's the most important thing. One thing I have all parents do, I put it on their little list of things to do, is spend 15 minutes of uninterrupted, child-led, child-directed play every day.
I love that.
Join your kid. Let them make the rules. Turn your phone off. And this is not a time to parent or discipline, just play. The power of play is such an amazing connecting tool that we have available. But we're so busy with our to-do lists, we forget to just be with our child.
Right. And it sounds like that's a wonderful way of blending the idea of mindfulness with the idea of play.
It's just a beautiful way to be fully present with your child, with everything turned off, including your thoughts, and just connect eyeball to eyeball. See this beautiful ray of light connecting your heart to your child's heart. And our kids know it. They know when you're fully present.
Yeah.
They know when they have you 100%. And it's amazing how full that will make your child feel, but also how differently you begin to see your child.
I've mentioned before a teaching that I heard from a teacher of mine about what is the soul in a person. The soul in a person is the ability to give our attention. And so when I hear you describe that wonderful idea of 15 minutes of directed play, that really strikes that chord in me about the idea of giving that complete, uninterrupted, focused time and really making time to make that soul connection during the day.
It's so true. And powerful moments when you first see your child or you are telling them goodbye at school. What is amazing is I started to become conscious as a parent. How many times am I going through a list? Did you brush your teeth? Where's your homework? What do we done? Instead of saying, oh, I'm so happy to see you. I've missed you. That beautiful connection in that one moment that says you matter. I see you. I feel you. You're so important to me. Like, we will get to the laundry list of things we need to do, but I just ask parents, observe your behavior. See how many times you're actually telling your child what to do.
Right.
Asking them questions about what needs to be done. Your child becomes a project, especially when it's a special needs child. There's a litany of lists and therapies and people to call and doctors. All of a sudden, your child's a fixer-upper. He's no longer a person. I had a little guy come in and he sat in my chair and he's like, I always feel like I'm wrong or I'm broken. That's how most adults feel. They don't have that language, you know?
Right.
And I'm like, you're not wrong. You're not broken. I'm like, your brain may work differently. We're just going to figure out how it works differently, and we're going to give you the right tools so you can be successful. How's that sound? And he looks at me and he says, that sounds awesome.
I love that. And it's so honest. You know, it's so honest. I feel broken. Well, we're going to do something about it. That sounds awesome. I see you and I see what we can do here. And a lot of times that's all that's needed for the buy-in, it sounds like.
And the thing is, parents can do this themselves if they're just really deep listening.
Right.
If you're watching, observing, and deep listening, your child will reveal through their behavior what's missing. And even if you just sit with the child. So I have another technique I give parents when children are tantruming. I call it stop, drop, and roll. And the first thing I say is just stop what you're doing and breathe. And then you drop to your knees. You get eyeball to eyeball with your kid. Drop your breath. And then have a go-to memory, something that just melts your heart. My little memory for my daughter is when she was 4, she wanted to be Dorothy. And so she'd wear her little red shoes on the wrong foot. Every time I see that, my heart's like, oh, it's so squishy, it's so sweet. So I have that. And even when she's 14, I can drop into that memory. And when she's, yelling and slamming doors, I can say, but that little girl with the shoes on the wrong feet's there, let me connect. And then from that space, I am moving from love. I'm not moving from anger, frustration, my own unmet needs, my own intolerance of everything that's happening in my life. I'm just right there in my heart. And then I roll with the energy, and I find out, is my child in a yes state of brain, which means they're responsive, or are they in no? That's reactive. If I have a reactive state of brain, then I want to speak calmly and slowly, just let it roll by. And I use very, very minimal speaking when I have a reactive state of brain.
It sounds like there is a lot of, again, I'm going to use the word mindfulness involved here. And, we sometimes hear the phrase mindful parenting. It's really just about, just like you said, being there and being present and being willing to go there. not just being aware of what the child is doing, but being able to go there and be part of that experience, to feel the need in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a powerful tool is put yourself in your kid's position, but maybe make it adult-like. When they've lost their favorite little car, that's not that important. But imagine you lost your diamond ring, or you lost,
Right.
your iPad or your phone. Those are their experiences. So being able to put yourself in their shoes and to say, what would I have needed in this moment? Amazingly, most of us don't want someone to solve our problems.
Right.
They want someone to be able to hold a space big enough for us to have our feelings, to work through that. And then we will find a resolution. Children are very clever and they're very resilient. If you give them time and space, they usually are pretty good about splatting out their feelings, getting it all out, and then moving on. They don't really hold on to it unless there's a problem of an unmet need that continues to go on. Then it can morph into something else. But in general, they're pretty quick and expeditious with their feelings.
I love this. And by siding with the child, you really are getting at the mind, body, and spirit, because you're having that whole experience with them in a very real way, in a very tangible way. And,
Right.
and I love that.
Well, in particular, too, what I always say is, children under 10, that's training ground for adolescence, because adolescence is where a lot of us were wounded, quite frankly, because nobody could hold a space big enough. You'll tolerate a 2-year-old temper tantrum. Most people won't tolerate a 14-year-old throwing down because they use bigger, badder words,
Right.
And we don't like that. And it's uncomfortable. I have so many teens that come to see me just to talk because no one can hold their feelings. Nobody will let them just be who they are. And they're going through so much growth, so much development. Their brain is under major construction. They think with their feelings, their big bad amygdala. And so they're just waiting for someone to say, you matter, and to help them navigate those choppy waters. So what I say is what you're doing when your child's younger is you're making that bond, you're making that connection, you're letting them know you're a safe person. So as they grow, as they develop, you can still connect with them because you're safe. They know that they can tell you anything because you can hold a space big enough without judgment. You can love them and help them process those big, big, big feelings that come up during adolescence.
For any parent out there, I'm sure this hits so close to home. And I'm sure we can all find, no matter how busy we are, the opening is there so many times during the day to find just one place to practice this tool.
So true. I always tell parents too with teenagers, it's really powerful to talk to them in the car. Nobody has to look at anybody. You can just talk and just let all those big feelings come up. There's a great space for just allowing your child to vent. One of my rather gross analogies, but when your child wants to spill all their big feelings, just imagine that they're verbally vomiting and you're holding them. Just let them go. Don't try to fix it. Don't try and offer a solution. Just let them let go of their feelings. And it's amazing. That's what a lot of kids just do in my office. The parents are like, oh, my child feels so much better. I'm like, because I'm not trying to fix them.
That's right.
Just letting them have their feelings. And what a powerful thing that is for someone to say, you're not your feelings, but you certainly have your feelings. So let's get them out.
There's so much here for adults as well. And I mean, if we had a 10-hour show, we could just go into all of that. There's so much here. There's so much here that's rich. And that brings us to the question then that I ask all our guests. After all of this work with children, all of this experience and all of this training adults and parents how to be with children, what's a tip or tool that you can offer our listeners right now that they can use on their own personal journeys of spiritual and personal growth? What's something that you've learned that you can pass on to us?
I think the most powerful thing is what you give away is what you have. So as you're giving away that mindfulness to your child, do that with compassion for yourself. And you can start with, what am I doing? What is the behavior that I'm having that is not being successful? Are you getting what you want? And then you can ask, what is the thing I am feeling or what I'm not feeling? What behavior have I adopted not to feel? And then I can look at my thoughts. What's the software playing out in your head? Is it time for an upgrade? You may be using the MS software. And so we need to go and say, oh, I need to replace that thinking because that thinking was handed to me, but that's not really true for me. Yeah. And lastly, when you look at what you believe, You can shine a flashlight under your bed and see that the monster belief started.
Yeah.
Most likely it was handed to you.
And so much of what we carry, like you just said, isn't something that we necessarily wanted to take on. It was given to us or handed to us, or it was something that wasn't given to us. And that's so powerful. Have you worked with adults where you've seen that advice come to fruition?
I have, and it's fascinating to me. I've seen adults who are having a behavior and then they have a feeling, and I ask, where have you felt that before? And they drop right back into a childhood memory.
Wow.
And what we do is I try and reframe it. Because what happens is a lot of times we form a belief system right there and right then. But remember, we're using the tools of a 4-year-old.
Right.
And the 4-year-old says, well, I just don't matter. So I'm here at 4. I'm grabbing at my mom's pant leg. She's ignoring me. I don't matter. So I scan back and I'm like, is there another possibility? Where was dad? Dad's at work. Where there are 3 other kids in the house. Mom's making dinner. Could it be mom was busy? It wasn't that you didn't matter. Mom had other things to do.
Right.
What would that feel like if you thought, oh, it wasn't that I didn't matter. It's just that there's a lot of things going on in the house. Wow, that feels better. So we have an erroneous belief. And then I ask, what would you have needed right then in that moment to be picked up and said, I matter? Can you do that to yourself now? If there were a little child sitting right next to you, would you pick that child up? Could you give that away? And the answer is, of course, yes, I can give that to myself. Where are you carrying that behavior right now where you're not giving yourself what you need? And how can you do that today? And it's something you can walk right out and do immediately. And once you start recognizing your own needs, meeting your own needs, it's amazing how powerful things change in your life.
This is such a strong piece of wisdom because it taps into something that's primal and common to all of us, which is the childhood experience. And I just think it's absolutely, absolutely beautiful. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Lisa for her time and insights. Thank you so much for this, Lisa. This has been very powerful.
You are so welcome. It has been a joy talking with you.
Thank you. And to all of you out there listening, if you have a child or love a child, remember that they're on a journey just like you. They have stops and starts, ups and downs, doubts and fears. They may not call it personal or spiritual growth, but that's what it is, just like it is for you. So next time a child zigs when you want to zag with them, follow them, see what you can learn and when you can take a new direction. So you can find out more about Lisa and her amazing work at peacefulparentingpathway.com or monsterproofyourchild.com, and her books and information about her trainings are there. And remember, you can always find out more at nobodyguidetolife.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter and Facebook at Nobody's View, or join the Facebook community, Simple Spirituality. If you like what you hear on this podcast, please consider a review or a subscription. It really helps, and we'd really appreciate it. Keep practicing and have a good week.